Hi there, my name is Adrian Wood. I'm Director of Strategic Business Development for Dassault Systems DELMIA brand. Joining me today is Brian Elwood, also from DELMIA. He's part of our Center of Excellence. He's a Senior Solution Consultant. And thanks for joining us on our webinar on demand on how to adapt industrial planning during and after disruptive events. The reason we're having this webinar is in the face of the COVID-19 crisis, production and planning processes have become subject to a level of stress unprecedented in recent history. Many manufacturers depend on impacted countries and networks for their supplies, and there have been regular and drastic breakdowns since the beginning of the crisis in January. All manufacturers worldwide are affected to a greater or lesser extent, which is putting a strain on their planning processes and organizations and jeopardizing their business continuity. So the objective of this webinar today is to discuss some of the ways you might improve your resilience to address the crisis today, and also how to put you in a better condition for the recovery and for potential future crises should we have them. For those of you that don't know Dassault Systems, I'm pleased to introduce you to our global organization. We have more than 17,000 passionate people around the globe that are part of the heart of our company. Beyond that, we have an ecosystem of more than 12,500 selected partners. And we have a large research and development team connected across 64 laboratories, delivering integrated solutions for our 3D Experience platform. And we're known as the 3D Experience company because we provide these virtual universes that allow our customers to create innovative new services and products. Now, these solutions are represented by a portfolio of different brands. Brian and myself are part of the DELMIA brand, and our tagline is where we make it happen. That's because we bridge the gap between these virtual and real worlds of production and manufacturing. And we help our customers collaborate, model, optimize, and perform their operations. So let's take a closer look at the DELMIA brand very quickly. So at DELMIA, our solutions really help customers in the most disruptive business environments. We currently have worldwide coverage with more than 1,000 planning and optimization experts around the globe. And we're very lucky to be recognized as leaders in our industry by research firms like Gartner, who place us in its Leaders Quadrant, IDC, LNS, and others. Now, if we take a look at the scope of what we address in the DELMIA brand, you can see that we cover a broad scope of solutions that cover different processes that occur over different time horizons, such as sales and operations planning at the most strategic level, where we're helping to plan the company's operational strategy across the entire value network, to master production scheduling across facilities in the midterm, to planning and scheduling at the facility level. And that's where we're going to focus our conversation today, is at that manufacturing planning and schedule facility level, where we can focus in on some of the challenges of optimizing production while managing changes. So what is it about balancing production with demand that's really so challenging right now? Well, production planning has always been about trying to make the best decision to meet demand, given the constraints behind material, capacity, and resources. It's challenging enough given the increasing demands of customers for unique products and shorter lead times, but business continuity now has added pressures from today's crisis. Production capacity is now subject to workforce absences and social distancing requirements that potentially impact throughput. Management now has to focus on those same employees in terms of balancing workforce capacity with costs. There's also the possibility that furloughing or downsizing now could impact the ability to rebound later when the crisis subsides and we start to reopen for business. Visibility is now worse because suppliers have either been overloaded with demand or on the opposite side, dried up in terms of supply with production problems of their own. And finally, customer demand has become extremely volatile as demand for supplies and products change throughout the life cycle of the crisis. And this volatility is impacting industries in different ways. If we look at some of the different examples, you can see that not all industries are in the same boat. For example, pharmaceutical and medical industries are experiencing surges in increasing demand. Others, such as the food industry, have to work and supply their product in the usual way with a steady, constant demand. And then, of course, you have some of the worst hit industries like aerospace and transportation, which are heavily impacted, drastic reductions in production or even total closures. And you can clearly see these stories play out in real time as we watch the news every day. As we previously said, the ability to make optimal production decisions becomes harder as variability increases. Even for companies with increased demand, it's still challenging for them to successfully operate efficiently. In some cases, they're even more at risk from potential workforce problems. So when we think about solutions to these problems, we have to think about them in unique ways. Now, we believe there'll be at least 3 distinct phases that manufacturers will have to consider how to deal with. The crisis as it is today, recovery as we start to reopen for business, and then preparation for future. Depending on the industry you're in, the impact on your business may be more or less critical, but all industries are probably asking themselves the same similar questions, which is how best to continue to deliver goods and meet demand despite the uncertainty today. How can we return to normal as efficiently as possible as the crisis subsides and we reopen for business? And then how can we learn from this crisis and prepare for the future? So to answer these questions, what do manufacturers have in terms of current processes to help them today? Now, of course, companies will be at different levels of maturity when it comes to handling their planning and scheduling process, but the fact is the majority of businesses are still way behind the curve in terms of current tools and processes. Excel is still one of the most popular tools for planning production, but like manual or homegrown solutions, it's time-consuming, it's static, and has a high risk of human error. Most importantly, these types of solutions don't provide effective decision support, let alone true optimization to make that best decision we desperately need today. These solutions also don't provide collaboration of the different stakeholders involved in production. Remember that effective planning is the result of an efficient process and workflow to arrive at a plan and schedule that supports our business goals. What we'd like to do now is show you a little bit of what that process should look like or could look like, and how DELMIA enables 3 of these workflows that address some of the challenges we've spoken about that we've discussed using our Ortems optimization planning and scheduling solution. So at this point, let me turn it over to Brian. He's going to take you through some of those scenarios.
Thank you, Adrian. My name is Brian ELWOOD, and I'm a solution consultant for Ortems, which is our planning and scheduling solution, which we're going to be showing you today in this demo. We're going to take you through 3 different use cases, all centered around crisis planning. First one is around a sudden drop-off of your demand and how you can react to that. The second one is around a sudden change in capacity due to a crisis. And the last one is centered on recovery and planning for when business gets back to normal and to deal with pent-up demand. So we're going to go right into the first scenario. Okay, the first thing we're going to do is try to represent a drastic and sudden drop-off of demand and see what the impact of our resources are. So I've logged on as a planner, and what I'm showing right now on the top half of the screen is each of my classes of resources. How heavily loaded are they in percentage based upon the current schedule before I make any adjustments. The lower half is a Gantt chart representing the progress of individual orders. As you can see, the schedule goes well into the future along my defined planning horizon. I'm next going to go make the adjustment to my actual demand, simulate what happens. I'm going to come in, I'm going to select my total requirements, and I'm going to decrease it by 60%. So what happened, the actual quantity on hand starts to build up rather dramatically because I now have said there's going to be less customer demand. On the bottom, it's actually showing to build that, we actually need to make less production. That's what the bottom of the half of the screen represents. We will now jump back and see the same capacity chart, and there has been some changes representing that simulation of adjusted demand. We are now using less of our capacity, so some of these numbers have gone down. What we'd like to do is save this as a baseline simulation. So we can keep this as a reference point for the other changes that we're going to make. Come in and we're going to save the simulation as an initial data set representing that decrease of 60% of demand. Next, what we're going to do, we're actually going to adjust the capacity because we do not need as much capacity as we did. So I will select an element of capacity that is currently very underutilized. Right now, we're showing that we have 5 of these machines, these milling machines, and we're going to say, well, for this machining center, we actually don't look like we need any. So I'm going to put in 0 to say we're actually going to shut this department down. So I've now reduced my capacity on purpose and taken it offline. And I notice there are no orders that are impacted by this change. There is nothing that is late. I'm now going to save that as another simulation. This is taking the entire mill department offline. So I now have 2 simulations. Now I'm going to go to the lathe resource, and I'm going to change it from 10 resources down to 5 to see what the impact is. I'm now going to level load, and then check how many orders may be impacted. There are still no orders that are impacted by shutting down part of that capacity in the lathe group. So I'm going to save that as a simulation. So I'll now have 3 simulations. Now I'm going to say, what if I actually take it down to 3 instead of 5? Run our level loading engine. Notice my service rate is actually decreased on my KPIs. Now I see that there are quite a few work orders that are now going to be delayed because I've actually removed too much capacity. And I will save that as yet another simulation. So now I'm going to go and actually compare my simulations. What I'm showing is for each of those simulations I just created, what is the impact on all these KPIs? There are about 40 standard KPIs within the system that can be configured for customers' needs. So you can quickly see the impact of your change. For our next use case, we'd like to see the impact that the crisis can have on some of our resource availability. What you're seeing on the top half of your screen is actually the current schedule, orders going through the various departments within manufacturing. On the bottom, it's alerting us to any human resource constraints we have for our employees. So even before any impact of the crisis, we're actually showing that for several days we are going to be short an operator on 2 of those days. So we're going to run a finite capacity routine, which is going to recommend some minor changes to the schedule. Now once we've run that, it tells us we've made some minor changes. It's recommending some minor changes to the schedule up above. And because of that, instead of having a deficit of operators, we now have a small surplus for those days. Now we want to check to see, did that change result in any missing orders or late orders? And it did come up with a couple, unfortunately. Now I want to tell the system how many employees do I actually think are going to show up for work and be available for work on these days. Normally we have 5, but based upon the crisis, we believe only a fraction of that are going to be available. So we're going to say for this period, only 2 employees are going to be available as operators. Based upon that, the system dynamically changed the schedule to respect the new restraint on labor. Now, we also are checking, did that impact our orders. And unfortunately, it actually produced 2 more orders that are impacted by these changes. So now we could actually go run our level loading engine again, but I've also heard that we're going to have some constraints in terms of raw materials from our vendors. So I'm going to switch and take a look at what the trends are for our raw material availability. As you can see here, our raw material availability for one of our purchased items is actually in deficit based upon this current schedule. And this is because one of our vendors has been impacted by the crisis. I can sort to say which is the impact that's going to happen the soonest, and it's on this forged axle. You can also see in the schedule those items in the schedule that are impacted by that shortage and what the path through manufacturing is and which operations are going to be blocked. Now I'm going to rerun our level loading engine, and the system has now generated a recommended plan that takes in our limited resource for people and our limited resource based upon our raw material. And as you're seeing, that new schedule respects all the finite capacities and is producing 0 delays to work orders. For our third use case, we need to start looking ahead. So although we're still in the middle of the crisis, we need to start preparing for when the crisis is over. So for example, one of our customers who is shut down right now during the crisis says he's going to flood us with orders once the crisis is resolved because he has pent-up demand. So what we're going to do, we're actually going to adjust the estimates for our forecast for this one item in future weeks and change it from 100% of forecast up to 120%. And then we're going to see the impact on our resources. As you can see, it made an immediate impact, and now many of our resource categories are actually over their limits. So notice all the red where we're over 100% of capacity. We're going to run our level loading engine, and it will recommend a new schedule. Based upon level loading logic, it has now suggested a schedule where in the near term, we're maxing out at 100%. But in some future weeks, we still have resource constraints. For one of them, we're going to filter to see the orders that are putting us over the limit. We're going to manually adjust the dates on the order because we have some slack. For the other order, we're actually going to move it to a different work cell. With those 2 minor changes, we were able to remove the over-resource condition. Now let's go to this 150%. We'll filter. We see there's 2 orders that are pushing us over our limit. We will filter for them. And we see blockage is in the furnace department. So we notice that we're already running all 8 of our furnaces, but we can try to get higher throughput. We can agree with manufacturing for that short period of time, they may be able to push the throughput to 100%.
So thanks for those demonstrations, Brian. As you can see from those workflows, there are many things that go into addressing the challenges facing today by manufacturing companies. But the benefits of being able to leverage a collaborative and easy-to-use solution that provides decision support are significant and worthwhile. The ability to improve agility, especially with unexpected events and changes in supply and demand, allow us to meet our customer due dates and increase customer service levels, which drives revenue. And at the same time, the ability to plan and schedule only what we need provides cost and time savings. Now, these benefits are important traditional corporate KPIs that we all know. We also have to remember that being able to sustain business continuity has a tangible human benefit to the workforce, which is also impacted. and to the recipients of those products, which could be essential during the time of crisis. So we believe then these are the attributes that the DELMIA Ortems solution brings to the table to help manufacturers and what manufacturers should be looking for in terms of agile planning and scheduling solutions. Solutions that are automated and integrated, solutions that are easy to use, and most importantly, the solutions that have that optimization capability at the core to help make that best decision. These are the keys then that you need to be more flexible, adjust faster, make rapid decisions, compare what's the best scenario for your planning, and therefore be more resilient. So in conclusion, unfortunately, COVID-19 will probably not be the last crisis we have to consider, although we certainly hope that nothing similar is seen anytime soon. But given our interconnected business world, both natural and man-made situations will likely continue to impact manufacturing in the future. Maybe 2020 will be the turning point for some to finally upgrade those static and manual tools that don't support the agile and adaptive planning process that will benefit them now and in the future. And although the situation is extreme, there's still time to take steps today that could help now as well as help prepare for future disruptions. And that leads us to our call to action for this webinar. And we have a call to action that we'd like to offer, knowing that companies are in different states of maturity and in different stages of the crisis. We'd like to leverage some of those 1,000 plus industry experts in planning and optimization to evaluate exactly how we could provide rapid help. Contact us at the following email address, and we're standing ready to help: delmia.covid19@3ds.com. We've also adapted several of our industry-leading solutions to provide an extreme rapid response to planning problems. This webinar you're listening to addresses the specific challenges of facility-level planning and scheduling. We may also be interested in two other solutions that we've also adapted. The first addresses the challenges related to matching supply and demand at the supply chain level, primarily directed at optimizing the supply and distribution of emergency medical supplies. The second addresses the workforce challenges related to staffing needs for service-based organizations and those companies with larger workforces. This primarily can help determine how to balance demand with minimal staff availability, or for those companies that are challenged with significant employee constraints from COVID-19 related restrictions. Again, for more information on either of these solutions, reach out at the same email address, delmia.covid19@3ds.com, or look for additional webinars and materials from Delmia. Brian and I'd like to thank you for your time today. We hope we've given you some thoughts on how to take a positive step forward in today's uncertainty. Please stay safe and healthy, and we look forward to connecting with you.